So, Andy, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Welcome to Scoutcast. As always, you're joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we are also joined by Seb. How is it going, Seb?
Good, thank you, friend. I'm closely watching this YouTube screen to see if we're actually working. Chat, help us out. There's hardware stuff and everything, but so Andy's doing lovely hosting. I'm doing lovely streaming. Rich is doing lovely guesting. We'll see how it goes. But that all aside, I'm good, my friend. I'm talking FPL with you. How could I not be good?
Exactly. And I do apologize to people that have been waiting in the chat as well. My second screen has stopped working. I don't know what's going on. Yeovil just cannot be, relied upon to provide internet, electricity, anything good really. We are also joined by Rich. How's it going, Rich?
Yeah, good. I've been sat here for a while watching you two faff around. It's been interesting. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to FPL coming back. It's nice that it's still light outside. Well, it was when you first started trying to fix the. I don't think it is anymore, is it?
Yeah,
it was. It was at 8 o'clock.
Well, I'm not going to lie because I'm now looking at the screen. I don't have the image to show what's on the screen, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of winging it, but I quite like it because, Rich, I'm not very happy because the last time we streamed, you were about 400k, and now you're highest out of all of us, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I think it's only for a week though, so that's what I was a bit worried it wouldn't go ahead tonight when I've got that rank before it plummets this week. And I think we'll see why it will plummet shortly.
Well, you've absolutely smashed it. And obviously we're going to look at the scores that all of us got last week because we had some okay scores. And actually, we all captained Saka, which was quite a good one for our stream, but we'll see how everybody got on in the chat as well. So in terms of what we're going to be looking at tonight, we're going to look at our points. We're going to look at our points from last week, which feels like a very long time ago now. We're going to talk about Salah versus Bruno because a lot of people have been talking about getting in one of those premiums for the double game week that we've got in game week 29. And Salah versus Bruno seems to be coming up a little bit. Obviously, we're going to talk to Rich about Salah because he absolutely loves Salah, even when other people don't, rightly or wrongly. And we're also going to talk about Bruno as well because he is the other premium that's got plenty of double game weeks coming up soon. We're going to look at the fixtures. So we're going to look at the fixture ticker and see how that's been updated, especially with the fact that double game week 34 has now been confirmed too. We're going to look at the perfect bench boost 29, how far away we are from that and how much we need to work to try and get as close to that as possible. We're going to look at game weeks 33 to 37, including a potential bench boost in game week 34. So we can compare what game week 29 looks like and game week 34 looks like if you want to use your bench boost. And we're also going to be thinking about wildcard in 33 if you want to use your bench boost in 34. And then we're going to look at our teams, our best teams moving forward, our community team, and also our questions. So let's have a look then. So moving on to my points. I like this because Seb's going to scroll me forward to my points. Fairly happy with my points this week. I don't actually have the total on there, so I'm just going to quickly look at it. I think it was 64. I had 64 this week. Defense was nowhere to be seen. Kepa in goal with 1, Zinchenko 2, Henry 2, Trippier 2, Botman 2. Not the best there. Maddison with 4. I used 2 free transfers in the end. I brought in Maddison and I brought in... I brought in Maddison. I took out March, and I brought in Watkins for Haaland. Fairly happy with those. I basically took the risk of losing a Brighton lad and then bringing him back in the week after for Odegaard so I could get 11 players and get Maddison in. So it meant that I had 4 extra points this week, which was quite nice. Obviously, Maddison maybe could have had a few more. So I was kind of going with the upside of Maddison there. But then I had Odegaard with 2. Saka, I had captain, got me 36. Kane with 6. Watkins with 5. And Tony with 2. And then loads of blank game week players on my bench. Very happy. Obviously, Sunday, out with the missus. Mother's Day, having a roast and just watching all the Saka points come in was quite nice, I won't lie. I was so close between Kane and Saka. And I think a lot of people were as well. But and when I was talking to Seb beforehand, he just kept saying, they're at home, Crystal Palace, don't overthink it. And I think your word that you were saying, Seb, was, he's clear. He's clear.
I mean, after the fact, I'll take the credit. Yeah, why not? There was no sarcasm there at all. It was a great call. You owe me a beer. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I owe you a few, I think. Moving on to Rich's team. These defences didn't do very well, did they?
No, they didn't, especially when we were playing. Like, I mean, you played 4 at the back. I played 5 at the back.
Yeah.
So yeah, Raya, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Pinnock, Botman, and Trippier all got 2 points. All the points were in midfield, really. Saka captain, 36. James Ward-Prowse, 10 points. The beautiful thing about James Ward-Prowse was, I mean, it probably shouldn't have been a penalty, but he scored as like a 2% differential in injury time, wiping out Kane's bonus as well. So that went pretty well. I also do feel quite fortunate because I didn't have any Chelsea defenders. Like I didn't have Kepa, didn't have Chilwell. I was praying that Everton scored and they did. So that was quite a big swing as well. That basically none of the defenders got any points apart from, I think Villa was the only clean sheet. Thinking back,
Yeah.
And then up top I had the very standard Kane, Tony, and Watkins. And I mean, like you were talking about your transfer in, there was people unhappy they bought Watkins in, but I mean, it gained 5 points instantly. So, and it's a player we want, or I want ongoing, or at least for the next few weeks. So, I mean, I was pretty happy that transfer got me 5 points. Obviously delighted to get the right captain, but it was all in the midfield, 72 points and 46 of them were Saka and Ward-Prowse.
Yeah, that's lovely. That is. I mean, Ward-Prowse, when you think a couple of weeks ago he missed a pen for you and we were thinking, oh, that's so unlucky. He's done you well since then, hasn't he?
He's made up for it. Yeah, because that cost me 13 points. Because if you remember, I had Matoma first sub with 13. And Ward-Prowse missed the penalty. So, yeah, I mean, I saw, because I wasn't watching that game, Seb put on WhatsApp, a bit like last time, about the penalty. So I was relieved he scored. I wasn't even 100% sure if he'd be taking them because he's missed a couple this season already.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's lucky, but I'll take it. I don't think I've had much luck until the last couple of weeks.
No, I like it. And what's your rank now for people that are listening on the pod?
Yeah, so it's 50k. So yeah, 2 weeks up from 340k to 50k. But I've used my wild card and my bench boost. So obviously you guys have the fun of bench boost this week, and I'm quite jealous actually. Although I wouldn't swap my bench boost for yours. No, but it's the fun of it, isn't it? It's the fun of it.
Well, and also, like, it's very easy to use these chips and get very minimal gain or even get red arrows at times. So you have got those green arrows now, and at least you've got the points on the board. That's the main thing. Yeah, I mean, genuinely, when I bench boost and wildcard 2 weeks ago, I thought if I could get to like 200k, I'd have been over the moon. So to be 50k, I mean, I can't complain. If I drop to 200k this week, I can't complain. You won't. I will complain though. But, yeah, you. I can't complain. Yeah. And Seb, moving on to your team, my friend. Again, defence not looking amazing, but you had a bit of a dilemma as to who to bring in, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I need to stop pressing buttons as well. My volume just appeared over your face. So, I mean, I'm amazed that we're still up. This is great. I feel like I've missed something. Well, I guess we'll find out later, won't we? It's blank slide. Yeah. So, I mean, very similar to a bunch of other people, right? Managed to get 11 out, scored mid-50s. Took a hit, which didn't pay off, which was, I guess the hit was Chilwell. I did Ben Mee to Chilwell and then Haaland to Watkins like everybody else. The team was Kepa, Trippier, Chilwell, Gabriel, Henry and Botman for a defence that scored about a third of what Saka did in total. Saka, captain, who was clear, obviously. I mean, that's variance, right? It's one of those 50-50 calls. Kane did indeed get points and he played first. And I think at that point, Saka captain does probably felt like, pressure's on. And Saka came up with, was it his largest score of the season, maybe, or at least close. So. I mean, that's ever. Was it actually ever? Yeah, I believe it was ever. Oh gosh. Well, that's when we say, when we say variance, luck, whatever you mean, that doesn't mean Saka was lucky or it was variance that he scored points. It was just a number of points, right? Predicting Saka to score well is fine. Predicting him to get his highest score ever, I didn't call that. I don't know if anyone else did. And then Odegaard next to him with not much there. Martinelli, another good pick there, although I think Odegaard looked decent. Kane, vice-captain, Tony and Watkins, bench of non-players, still Rashford, McAllister and Matoma. And then, so what you said, Andy, I think I kind of wanted to do Havertz rather than Watkins. Maybe just for the vibes, right? But when I ran out a bit of time at the end, I was doing the community team, so I went with what I thought was like, I couldn't justify doing Havertz and I ran out of time to try and justify it to myself, so I thought, let's not be too silly here, let's just go with the sensible pick in Watkins. And then Chilwell was my hit, which whatever happens, I've lost a point on that because Ben Mee outscored him by 1 point, even if, next week the 4 points is earned back or whatever you want to call it. That was a bad move, like a decent decision, but bad move in the end, I think. Should have waited a week for that one. And did quite fancy Reece James as well, but got the assist, and now he's got the injury, which is the reason I guess I went Chilwell. So a loss to a win on that one, maybe. We'll see.
And Havertz is flagged as well.
Easy. I didn't even know that. Oh, I've got away with it.
So you've dodged a couple of injuries there.
You know who
injuries.
You know who I'd love to tell you I thought about, but if I'm being honest, I didn't really. Is Isak. Obviously, looked brilliant, scored good points, looked good on the numbers as well. And as we'll see later in the chat tonight, medium to long term, he's looking pretty tasty as well. But I think you've now had his best fixture for a little while. And so now you'd rather have your Watkins or maybe even Havertz. But when he got his brace, because he got a goal in the end, he got an assist that was ruled out and then turned that into a brace like in the last few minutes. I think you'd be happy to take those points to the bank, wouldn't you? But I don't think I really ever thought about Isak. It was Watkins or Havertz for me.
Yeah, I didn't think about Isak at all. I think someone even asked me and I said, I've got no interest in Isak because I thought that Wilson was obviously waiting in the wings and he'd eventually take some points from him as well. But I wonder how many people would have gone for Isak if they would have known that game week 31 wasn't going to be Newcastle doubling. Because I think a lot of people did it knowing they would have those doubles coming up.
Yeah.
He's been an okay option, obviously. And obviously, like you said, he got the brace. But it's an interesting one. And actually, he's somebody that people are thinking about bringing in now, potentially.
Well, I mean, I think it was Wilson, wasn't it? Because he was injured or rumoured to be injured just beforehand, which gave Isak the 90 or X90 at least, which maybe would have tipped some people. I wasn't across that, so that never really came into my thinking. And I mean, hey, our ranks were nice. So Green Arrows, decent. I say decent ranks, decent for where we've been. I think there's something like, I think the hit is the difference between me and you, Andy. So I'm like 4 points behind you. Yeah, which is nuts. It's like 11k rank. We'll be about, if things go well, we'll be about even with Rich, maybe. But he's got those points in the bank, so it's nice, isn't it? We'll see what happens.
Pretty sure I talked you into that hit as well. I was like, yeah, take the hit. Take the hit, Seb.
Probably, man. Yeah, you can take the blame for that one. I'll have another beer. Thanks very much.
And you always listen to me. Right. Moving on to our first topic then, which is Salah versus Bruno. So both of these players obviously have doubles this week in game week 29. One double is considerably better than the other, I would say. Obviously, Salah has two of the hardest games you could probably get, which is City and Chelsea away. Bruno doesn't have Chelsea and City away. But a lot of people are thinking about who to bring in. Now, some people are able to do this for free, and some people aren't having to completely ruin their teams to bring these players in. Some people are having to make difficult decisions about whether to get rid of, for instance, somebody like Kane or Saka to get these players in. Now, if we just start completely simply here, we're just going to compare the two, and then I'm going to start, asking Rich and Seb some of these more difficult questions about whether you get these players in. Rich, if we start with you, I know you've been a big advocate for Salah, and I know you actually really like Salah moving forward, even as a captaincy option this week. Is he, using Seb's word, clear of Bruno in your eyes?
It's so difficult because you look at are the stats on screen? Yeah, they are. Because you look at like the XG of Salah. I mean, you could tell this probably without even looking at the stats, but Salah obviously has much bigger goal threat than Bruno. We're looking at 0.5 XG for Salah over the season and only 0.2 for Bruno. And what surprised me here is the XA, the assist potential, is actually much, much closer than I expected. When you think of Bruno, you think of quite a creative player. Yeah. And maybe it's because he's lost some corners and stuff this season, but his XA per game is only 0.3. Salah's only just behind on 0.2. So you look at the stats, you look at the history of the player, you even look at the points this season, and Salah is clear in that regard. Yeah. I think where it gets tricky is obviously it depends on chip strategy. Liverpool have only got a further double after this week, whereas Man United have got a couple. So I think it's the fixtures that make this closer than it should be. Because if they had the same fixtures, I think it would be a no-brainer. I'd pay the extra for Salah.
Yeah. It's interesting as well, isn't it? And I think a massive thing is Casemiro being out as well. I think that makes such a massive difference to Manchester United as a whole. And I think Bruno, although he might not necessarily play deeper in terms of that's where he's going to be placed at the beginning of the game and he'll play the 90 minutes, he's going to have to drop back more when Casemiro isn't there. And I think that does make a massive difference. And you think his XG is considerably lower. So obviously he's kind of relying on those penalties and assists. And all of a sudden he becomes slightly less better as an asset. I mean, Seb, in your eyes, Salah and Bruno, obviously Rich's already touched on it. It's not as easy as just looking at this and saying who's got the better double this week, because Bruno has quite considerably more fixtures moving forward, and fairly nice fixtures as well. Whereas Salah's got this one and then just one more. Which way are you kind of tilting at the moment?
Probably Bruno. For, like you say, maybe future reasons as much as current reasons. We have the expected stats on screen here. We had the fantasy stats, which is points and stuff so far. Oh goodness, excuse me. But I think the one that interests me the most is we just have a little comparison of their heat maps seasonal so far. Now, obviously, Bruno's moved around a bit, and you can maybe see that in here. But I'd say he's on the right. Sorry, Salah on the left. That's obvious, right? If you know what you're looking at. But I think there's a fairly obvious sort of line here where Bruno is like heavily involved outside the penalty area, and then obviously dropping a little bit deeper on the flanks as he interplays and interchanges with players there, but just is not entering the penalty area, or at least not enough for this to show up loads. Maybe he enters and gets some key touches. Whereas Salah, obviously dominating that right-hand side, coming central a bit, but you can see if you compare them side by side here, how much more he has in the penalty area, even though it's just to the right-hand side as Salah attacks, of course, our left-hand side here. And we see that. We know Salah's a better goal scorer. He's probably a better fantasy asset. I think, as Rich said, it's probably the fixtures that make us think it's a choice between the two. Maybe it's not a choice between the two if you've got the transfers or you've got a free hit, bench boost, wild cards, whatever you're looking at. So I would prefer Salah as a player, but I think for the scenario we're in, I prefer Bruno. But I would come to you, Andy, and ask, with these heat maps, I guess what I want is those touches in the box for Fernandes. It doesn't really seem to be getting them no matter what. And we've seen the numbers, Rich said a little bit closer. Penalties are big for both of them. Is Fernandes going to drop back with Casemiro not there? And even if he isn't, something that I was just thinking about, which I've not researched this any further, so apologies if I'm incorrect, but Casemiro isn't just the ball winner in that Man United side, right? He is considerably better than the other sort of 8s, 6s, whatever you want to call them. He will progress the ball decently too as well, or at least carry it, move it into positions where, say, Fernandes can do something. If he's coming deep, not just out of possession, but in possession to make stuff happen, that's a problem for us as well, right? I don't want Fernandes, from a fantasy perspective, doing stuff around the centre circle, even if he's taking long shots. I want him arriving late in the box, which we know he can do, even if most of his points will come from penalties.
Yeah, and he will have to drop back at times because he's going to be the most creative player kind of in that kind of third of the pitch, and he's going to have to drop back at times. And we've got some games coming up. You even look at just Newcastle in the first game. That's going to be a tough game, and we're going to be expecting him to create. And is it going to be a high-scoring game anyway? It's tough to see that being a massively high-scoring game. I think it says a lot that I'm not overly fussed by Bruno. The only thing that's worrying me about Bruno is that a lot of people are going to be bringing him in. But I just think it's just the fact he's on pens. That's the biggest thing I think with him, is that obviously, and it's the same, we've said it for ages, haven't we? Especially with these double game weeks. If you get the player that's on pens, you could get lucky, and then all of a sudden you've got a pen, especially as he's a midfielder, that's 5 points. You're getting the bonus as well, and then he's got an extra game. It is massive. But I don't think I'm that fussed. I just wish there was another United player that we could bring in, like someone like Martial that was viable, or Weghorst that was viable. But I don't really see it. Even Sancho's not. He's back in and he's played that 10 role every now and again. But I don't see it being. I don't see it that somebody else is kind of equal to Bruno in terms of someone you can bring in. So it's a bit of a shame. I don't think I'll be going for him just because it's going to hurt my team so much. But if I could get him for free, I think it's an easy move. I think it's an even move just to get him, because with the sheer amount of fixtures you can have, why not take that move? Rich, I mentioned it just a minute ago. Yes, if you can get him for free, it's lovely to get Salah and Bruno. What if you had somebody like Kane or Saka, and that was the only way you could get to them? So getting rid of Kane with your 2 free transfers, or even for a hit, and bringing these players in, because Kane obviously doesn't have those double game weeks, but Bruno has plenty of them. Saka doesn't, but Bruno has plenty of them. Would you be making those moves?
I think I'd find Kane a lot more disposable than Saka. I think they're both disposable over the next 3 or 4 weeks. It's just this fixture that Saka has this week at home to Leeds. And this is before, what happened last week or what happened in the England game last night. If I was bench boosting this week, which I'm not, but I still looked at what my team would be in 29. The plan was always to keep Saka. I wouldn't really like losing him. I'd like losing Kane. But there's so many moving parts in all of this because there was some news just before we came on that Haaland's gone back to Man City and he's going to be assessed ahead of the Liverpool game. I think a lot of us are keeping money back just so we can get Haaland for Tony. That seems to be very popular in 30. Then if Haaland's not back though, maybe it's a bit easier to go for Bruno or Salah. I've got a decision myself if I go for Salah or Bruno because I've got the money for both. That's tricky. But then if I go for Salah, it blocks Haaland. So it feels like we all know the team we want in a few weeks, but it's just going to be the best way of getting there. That's going to be the tricky thing. I really don't like losing Saka this week, but I do understand why some people are, especially on bench boost more than non-bench boost, as it were.
Yeah. What do you think, Seb, in terms of because it just feels like this has happened all year, hasn't it? Where we're getting rid of reliable players. Like Kane and Saka have been incredibly reliable this year. Bringing in someone like Bruno, who hasn't been reliable this year, but he does have the fixtures, it feels like a bit of a hide into nothing, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think in the next few weeks you'll have no Arsenal. Whether that's now or later, maybe is the question. But with the doubles, with your sort of 33 to 37 period, we'll look at some teams in a minute. I don't think Saka's in many of them. From that 33 period. So it's when you lose your Arsenal, not if. Now, that could definitely go wrong, but we're playing the probabilities, and I think the probability favours not having Arsenal for the medium to long term. I guess the budget thing Rich was mentioning as well, right? That's the more sensible route for me. I've got Odegaard, Gabriel. I'd lose them first before Saka, but that's not instead of, it's just an order of priority. The interesting one with Haaland is he'll play this weekend. He'll surely play this weekend. But say we found out he was out this weekend. We're just going to have the same question every single week. Like at no point are you going to go, oh, sweet. Because it's not like he's suffered an injury where we know he's out for a month, 2 months, 3 months. Maybe that does happen, but it doesn't sound like that's going to develop into it. So every week you're going to be going, oh, can I get Fernandes and Salah and Trent and everyone and commit to no Haaland or commit to hits to get Haaland? Or I'm always going to be holding that money back. So it almost doesn't matter if Haaland is fit this week or not, because every week you're going to have that question. And especially ahead of the doubles coming in the future, he's a captain, right? In 34, it's him or Salah, I think. So it doesn't matter if you have the money in Haaland or not, because you'll want the money. And therefore, to go back to, I guess, what we're looking at here, I think if you're looking at doubling up, you can't really be keeping someone like Saka, maybe Kane as well, if the plan is Haaland.
So go on then, Seb. If they came out and said, no, sorry, Haaland's not going to play, not quite fit, but he'll be fine next week, do you invest that money into Bruno or Salah? Or do you still keep it? So now you don't have Haaland, obviously, for this week. You just have that money in the bank and you don't have Bruno or Salah. Do you go down that route, or do you use that money this week in a double game week? I
guess there's a few. So get both of them, right? Or just
either, or just get one of them.
Because I think most of us can get at least one of them and still have a route to Haaland, right? So I don't know if that's a problem.
I can't.
You can't.
No, I can't. No. Ooh. I'd have to get rid of Kane to get one of them.
I think you do Kane to Haaland in, is it 31? I think we might want him back. I think you do Kane to Haaland in 31. Which means maybe you could carry Salah and Fernandes now. But then you're also, the reason you're mostly picking Fernandes, and so, you could go double Manchester United defence, right, is for some doubles that are still to come in the future. I guess you'd want to be pretty confident that Fernandes is going to continue being a good option. He's not going to change much more, right? He's probably the worst he's going to be now. You want to see a fit Eriksen to make sure he's going to play 10. Fernandes there's not Eriksen, sorry. So I guess you could. But I think then you're doing Kane to Haaland, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's it. Yeah, and I was speaking to somebody else the other day saying I think that would be the move later on. Is Kane is your then way to get to Haaland, isn't it? Rich, how essential are they both to get, even if it's just this week? In terms of, I'm looking at captaincy this week, and I mean, I'm kind of favouring someone like Matoma even over Rashford. Would you be captaining Salah or Bruno this week anyway? So, is it essential you get them in this week if you're not looking to captain anyway?
I think it's an odd one because I think captaincy's so close this week, especially because Rashford, he's not been in the England squad, etc. I think captaincy's so close this week. It feels like the one a couple of weeks ago where we all captained Tony and Brighton midfielders. Yeah. It feels a bit like that. So if I do bring in Salah or Bruno, they're straight in the captaincy discussion from my team. But then there are other you could just captain a Brighton midfielder. You could just captain Rashford. So I wouldn't say they're essential. I think they're going to be quite lowly owned, especially Salah.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say they're essential, but I think we're going to want them, especially Salah. Like, I feel like Bruno's going to be the one people want now, but in a couple of weeks, it's going to completely change. And I think one key point for Bruno is that he's got obviously this double, and then he's got a couple of really, really nice fixtures straight after it as well.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think everyone's going to want Salah. I think it's going to be an absolute no-brainer, like it has been only a couple of times this season. But I really do think it's going to be another race for people to get as many Liverpool assets in as they can.
Yeah,
It's probably the third time it's happened this season where people will go from no Liverpool to trying to get 2 or 3. So I'd want a plan for Salah, 100%.
I think there's been a little bit as well which happened where people have been looking at these double game weeks and looking at their benches, and obviously they're thinking about that bench boost, and they've invested a lot of money and spread those funds out quite a lot, haven't they? Like, for instance, like Seb, you went Chilwell this week, didn't you? Whereas I held on to Henry because I was thinking, well, I can bench Henry moving forward. At least he's really cheap. Whereas I think a lot of people have kind of, like, a lot of people went Chilwell and James from like 2 Brentford players and things like that. And I think now people are realising, like Richard said, you're going to want Salah later on. And now you want Bruno, and you still want to keep Kane, and Haaland might be coming back in. And all of a sudden, we're actually using quite a lot of our money that we didn't think we would be, aren't we? Sorry, that's to Seb.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think so. But I think, again, when we get onto the teams in a bit, I think you can see that it's still a kind season pricing-wise. We are going to have some slightly stronger benches, if nothing else because of rotation, right? I think the plan for a lot of people is free hit 33 in those blanks, but maybe you can
32,
navigate... 32, sorry, thank you. Wildcard would be 33, wouldn't it? Maybe you can navigate around that if you have a strong 15. But we want to be rotating our players into these doubles and into these strong fixtures as much as possible. And we are able to do that with the budget we have and the players we have available to us, right? Arsenal have been very, very cheap. Newcastle are very cheap. Man United, Rashford was 6.5 at the start of the season. So while, I guess you'd want to keep the money in your 11 as much as possible and have the option of, say, a freemium, that's really the only thing, right? I don't think it's stopping you getting anyone else. It's just maybe preventing you having like a Haaland, Kane and Salah.
Yeah. Before we move on then and have a look at the fixtures and kind of the overlook all the way to game week 38 now, that's scary. Rich, Salah or Bruno, are you bringing either in this week?
Yes. I don't know which one. I do think it's going to be Bruno. I've got a bit of an idea for chips when we get to the next screen as well. But I think I am leaning towards Bruno still, but it pains me. It actually does pain me. Like, I'd love to get Salah back because all I'm going to be thinking is, how do I get Salah for the next few weeks?
And Seb, what about you? Are you bringing either in?
Yeah, I'll probably do Bruno. I'll wait till late in the week this Monday for anyone not listening on Monday. But I'll wait till late in the week. But yeah, I'll do Bruno. Then I will probably do Saka to Salah, Tony, Kane, whatever. We'll go to Haaland depending on that. So I'll end up, where I want to be.
Andy seemed really annoyed then. And captain him, Seb?
What, Fernandes?
Yeah.
Nah, McAllister, mate. If Rashford has got a doubt, McAllister, innit?
Brilliant.
For his DM position, probably.
See, because I'm edging towards not getting him. I don't know.
Oh, fair.
It's a tough one.
Genuinely, I've not looked. Like, again, we're on Monday. We've just come off the international break. There's a few questions to be answered. I think it's good to identify options, but not settle on anything tonight, right? Let's talk later in the week.
Agree. It's not.
No. I'm locking in tonight.
Yeah, fair enough. You're 10k ahead of me, mate. You do what you think is best.
Exactly. Right, moving on to fixtures then. So we've got our kind of transfer algorithm here, which Flappy got from, I can't remember. It's Mikel, isn't it? It's
Mikel Tokvam, his transfer algorithm. Yeah. So I think it's at Mikel Tokvam on Twitter.
Yeah, yes, it's brilliant as well. It is really, really good. And obviously we have a few more fixtures now that are confirmed. We were working on probability quite a few weeks ago, weren't we? And it was there weren't a lot of 2s on the table, whereas now we know for sure a lot of these double game weeks that are happening. And you can see here that game week 29 is the massive double game week we've got coming up. And we've got 2 single game weeks, potential for a double game week in 31, but we don't think that's going to happen now due to the fact that game week 34 was declared a double game week, but 31 wasn't. So it seems like that's probably not going to be one now. And it was going to be Brighton and Newcastle. Game week 32 is the blank game week where Brighton, Chelsea, Manchester United and Man City all blank. And obviously the big thing with that is they're kind of the players that we're wanting to own moving forward. So that's why a lot of people are free hitting in 32. game week 33 is normal, and then 34 is a double game week as well. Now, I know, Rich, you mentioned just now about chips a little bit. We've said here that a few people are thinking about free hit 32. Some people have still got their wild cards and are thinking about doing a double game week in bench boost in 34 to go with the double game week. The way it's played out so far, do you feel obviously we need to get there before we can say which one was the best way to go, but how's it looking for you looking forward at the moment?
I mean, the thing that came out straight after all the fixtures were announced, was it seemed like the majority, like 95% of people plus, are going to, with a free hit left, I have to add, we're going to free hit in 32 and then do whatever, if they've got other chips, they use them later, or they might be bench boosting this week. So that seems to be the popular way people are going. And I mean, looking at it, it does seem quite obvious, as in it seems quite easy. You've got a clear route that you can follow. However, if you don't have, in 32, when people are going to be free hitting, it's Brighton, Chelsea, Man United and Man City are blanking. Now, if you don't have any Chelsea assets, like myself, you haven't got Chilwell, you haven't got Havertz, Kepa's less important. It depends, who you've got as your backup goalkeeper. You could potentially get through 32, especially, Haaland's up for debate. If he's injured for a couple of weeks, you could just not get Haaland. You could just play through 32 and then free hit in 34. What I like about that is you save your free hit, and then you can, in the hardest possible game week, 34, when you want to get those 3 Liverpool players in, like I talked about, last time people were doing -12s to get them all in, you could just free hit in for a double, like Trent, Salah and Robertson, or Trent, Darwin and Salah. And then you don't have to worry about Liverpool assets again, because while their fixtures are still okay, they haven't got any more doubles after 34. So I think it's very, very team specific, but I think there is an argument to free hit in 34. And I'm sure people will make good arguments to free hit in 36 or 37, which I haven't looked into as much, I must admit.
Yeah, it's really tough because of the teams that blank in game week 32, it just looks like a really logical way to go in terms of, this is us talking about, obviously going to be bench boosting 29, but I've already used the wild card. If people are dead ending their 32 and using their wild card in 33, we're going to look at that in a minute anyway. That makes an awful lot of sense as well. But Seb, it just seems like the logical route when all the players we want before and after are blanking in 32. But do you think, like Rich has just said, there's some merit in maybe trying to go through it and then free hitting in 34 if you need to?
I guess the obvious answer is always the old team dependent, right? And there's a few differences between me and Rich, for example. Joel, we can see Chelsea are a big part of this strategy, where they blank and where they double. I think that's the thing, right? Rich has probably seen. Tell me if I'm wrong here, Rich. I don't want to speak for you, but I think Rich has probably seen this and gone, okay, I know the first route that everyone's gone for, but can I find an alternative that is better? He's not trying to go, can I be different for different sake? It's, can I find something that gives me an edge? And that's always the right thing to do. Even if you then don't go with that, we should, of course, interrogate what is the meta strategy, even if it just reaffirms the meta strategy. For me, and I'm obviously thinking of this from my team's point of view, I have triple Brighton, I have 1 Chelsea, and I would love to have 2, if not 3, mostly depending on Reece James by the time this comes around. I will very likely have triple Man United, if not double, and I will have Haaland. I probably would only have Haaland, but then I might build a few more City. Maybe Ederson is back, as Rich was saying a few weeks ago. So at that point, I'm looking at minimum 6, if not 8 players who blank in 32. So the free hit obviously makes sense there. But not only that, if we look at these fixtures, there's a lot of strong correlation, especially Brighton, especially Man United, City, a little bit of Chelsea as well, and then Newcastle, who we'll get to in a minute when we look at chips, where teams that not only blank in 32, but double in 34 and double in 36 or 37, most likely. Of course, there's a few other low percentage chances that they double elsewhere. But for me, so the free hit wouldn't be enough to make that strategy work for me, because while, of course, I could, put a great team together in, say, 34, well, I'd still want half that team back, give or take, for 37, and I don't have the free hit anymore. And the important thing is, I've burned a transfer closer to when I need it. So, of course, when you free hit, you can't roll a transfer. You also can't make a transfer that week that sticks for the long term. It's a 1 week thing. So whatever you do, you're going to lose a transfer by free hitting in 32 or in 34 or any other week. But I guess I'd rather have that transfer closer to when I'm going to need it. So use the free hit in 32, be able to use a transfer ahead of 34 or 36 and 37 to adjust my team for those fixtures. I think there's every chance, depending on how your team looks now, either strategy could work for you. But I think for most people, the free hit in 32 makes sense. Because a load of us wildcarded for Brighton, we're going to get Man United. We're probably getting Chelsea, I think. We'll have Haaland, so on and so forth. And we want to be targeting our transfers maybe at a team like Newcastle, who could double in 36. And we maybe only have Trippier off right now. Although some people who are wildcarded obviously may have triple Newcastle defence.
A key thing, actually, you just made me think of when you were talking there is, I'm going to talk about goalkeepers really briefly again.
Oh, yes. Here we go.
I think something important for that strategy.
Don't worry. He's talking about goalkeepers now.
I'll keep it brief. Hold on,
drink.
If you've got Steele, for example, you're going to... If you've got Steele, for example, and you've got him with like Raya or someone else, you've got a goalkeeper for 32. Obviously, Seb, you've got Steele, but then you've got Kepa,
yes,
who also blanks.
Yep.
So I think part of it would be the goalkeeper pairing, because then you've technically only got two. Well, you only got two Brighton outfield players instead of having three. So there's probably two things you need: is less Chelsea, because obviously they blank, and then if you've got Steele as one of your Brighton assets, or you've only got two Brighton assets, I think it's more viable. But yeah, I don't know if it's better yet, but I think it's worth, looking at your team and seeing if you can deviate from free hit 32 before you just blindly follow it.
I think whatever you do with transfers, whether it's setting up for a free hit in 32 or 34, whatever, you need to look at more than just those weeks, because you want these transfers to carry through. So to use the goalkeeper example, if I'm going to free hit, sweet, I've got Kepa and Steele and I don't have to worry about that because I've got some nice doubles to come. If you aren't going to free hit, I'd say Edison, but he also blanks there. So Nick Pope, maybe, is your friend? Something like that is probably where you want to be going.
And I think it's really tough to attack the next 3 game weeks trying to build for a blank in 32 as well, if that makes sense. So, for instance, even this week, people are getting rid of potentially 2 Arsenal players, and obviously they have that fixture in 32, and it's a nicest fixture as well, isn't it? I can't remember which one it is now. But it just feels quite hard. Like, do you then not attack the next 3 to the optimal amount that you could, because you want to not, is the free hit in 34 enough to mean that you're building towards that 32 and not having the best 29, 30 and 31, if that makes sense? But like Rich has said, it's an option. And if you can already get through 32 and you'd be all right, then save your free hit for 34 would be quite nice, I guess.
Should just say, because we're going to move on, I think, to it in a second, there's probably a strategy, I don't know if you'd still have your free hit in this scenario, that Rich's 30, like a non-free hit in 32 makes more sense based on what I was saying, and that is if you are wildcarding in 33, because then everything I said about having players going forward does not matter. You can dead end into 32, get rid of those Brighton, get rid of Chelsea, or you didn't bring in Chelsea, whatever it is. In that scenario, you might have used your free hit earlier because you maybe used it in 28 when we didn't because we wildcarded, but that is maybe the one scenario where you hold that free hit, and maybe even 37 is your target, because by then you're right towards the end of the season. There could be team news changes, different teams fighting for different things. If that's something you value, that might be the most value over the rest of the field to have a new squad. Yeah.
And lastly, before we move on to our perfect bench boost 29 team, Arsenal and Spurs there. No double game weeks, no potential double game weeks. Rich, we shouldn't be scared not owning them, should we? We should be able to get rid of Kane, Saka, Odegaard, Zinchenko. These boys that have been so good for us this year, we shouldn't be scared getting rid of them, should we?
No, I mean, I really don't mind getting rid of Spurs players. I saw someone suggesting Porro earlier, but I mean, I'm not going to be bringing in, a Spurs player. And I think most people will look to sell Kane reluctantly. I think the Arsenal players are interesting because we're going to want them at the end of the season. I think 37 and 38, you will want them. I am kind of tempted, if I can make it work, to keep Gabriel on my bench. Obviously, I've got 2 Arsenal defenders. I think Zinchenko's almost certainly going to go. But I think someone like Gabriel, if you've just got him tucked around your bench, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Even if you're bench boosting this week, that home to Leeds, we've seen what Gabriel can do. Some people have seen what he can do on the bench, Seb. But
I hate you. It's true. Boom. Remind when we get to not the bench boost 34, but like the wildcard 33 going forward strategy. Remind me of that, because there's an interesting thing with, like, there's not that many teams available to you that you want to triple from, and having Gabriel in your defence causes a problem.
Okay. Oh wow. I almost want to wait for that bit then before I say any more, and then completely do a U-turn and. But for now, until Seb blows my mind, I'm happy to keep Gabriel on my bench.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's worth mentioning as well, and this is one of the ways I looked at it, was I feel better selling the Arsenal assets knowing that the time I want them is in 32, and I'm free hitting in 32 anyway. And it makes you feel a little bit better knowing that. I think I still will keep Saka because I feel like it's his season a little bit, if that makes sense in terms of stats and how the output he's getting. But yeah, it's an interesting one in selling them. I think people are very worried about selling these players when, if you look at it, I don't think you have to be quite as worried, maybe. But yeah, it's obviously personal preferences.
Yeah, well. I think there's enough fixtures, as in enough teams having good fixtures and double game weeks to make it worthwhile. And I mean, we're going to have bench headaches. Once the bench boosts and stuff are gone, there's still going to be all these headaches. We can only have 5 midfielders. I mean, one problem with 34 free hit, for example, is you can only have 5 midfielders, and there's probably 6 or 7 midfielders that you want. You're going to have to go without some big players. So again, it does make it easier to lose Saka down the line.
It's gonna be a really good test for the whole, that emotional attachment to how well Arsenal have done this season, how well Saka has done. The fact they'll be fighting for the title, I'm not sure that should matter if another player has more and better fixtures, but that's going to weigh on us and our decisions going forward. And I think it's an interesting test for that sort of dispassionate approach to FPL. Whichever way it goes, I wouldn't say it proves either side, right? If Saka goes and scores 100 points between now and the end of the season and I don't have him, I don't think that means I was wrong, but I'm certainly going to feel bad about it. But likewise, if Saka does terrible compared to whoever I pick, I'm not going to claim victory. But I think it will be an interesting test for whichever approach you kind of prefer to FPL and to see how that treats you over this period.
It is interesting because he's been obviously incredible, especially the last few weeks. Well, especially the last game week, but he wasn't a very highly owned player for much of the season. Yes, many people we haven't really captained him that many times.
You had him when he was like balling out, and he was only like 3% owned.
Yeah,
it's true, but he still wasn't doing like that well. As in, he was doing well, but there were arguments. Remember, Odegaard had more double-digit
he was super frustrating, man. Like we had the meta at the beginning of the season was like an Arsenal defender, I think. Yeah, I had Gabriel, Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus. Saka should have, could have, would have been doing amazing, but Martinelli was a bunch cheaper. Everyone went there, and I think most weeks I felt like, especially with Saka on penalties, I felt like I got away with not having him. That finally turned around, of course. But yeah, like you say, there's been a while where it has made decent sense not to have him, despite him being brilliant.
Yeah, but he's not been like a Salah of, in previous seasons. He's not been someone we've all owned the whole season and captained every week. So there seems to be a lot of sentiment for him still.
And for what it's worth, we're not saying like bin off Saka as quick as possible. No. If your team, I think I said earlier, right, it's about a priority thing, not about a must get rid. If your team can carry Saka, awesome. That's a lovely little bonus for your team. I just think for most of us, there are only limited midfield slots. There are probably 5 players, give or take, with a better points potential in those slots. And also he's, Odegaard's 2 million or 1 million, whatever it is now, cheaper. If you are looking for those funds for Salah, Fernandes, having a Haaland later, Saka unfortunately might provide them.
I think it's got to be something long term, though, hasn't it? I wouldn't do like a hit for Maddison, who you're then going to remove, in a couple of weeks anyway.
I mean, I'll have Saka this week, right? Just so I'm probably going to lose Odegaard and Gabriel in that order. I'll have Saka this week, and then I'd probably lose him. He'd be my 2 Salah move next week or the week after or whatever.
Nice. Right, let's move on to Bench Boost 29. So a lot of people are thinking about playing their Bench Boost this week. Even if you're not, this is what we envision being the best team that you can make for this game week. So if if you're looking for who to bring in, then it'd probably be one of these players. I believe it was Rich that set this team up. So just talk to us about this team at the moment, Rich.
Yeah, I did it very, very quickly a couple of hours ago. So it's just to give a flavour of who might be the better picks. So goalkeepers, I've gone for Steele and Kepa. Obviously, you might be a bit nervous about going Steele, so I guess you could go for Dunk or something instead, but I've gone for this. Defenders, Chilwell, Shaw, Trippier, had to put Trent in, and Fabian Schär as well. Midfielders, Rashford, Matoma, Salah, Bruno, McAllister. Obviously, Matoma and McAllister, that's my preference. I'm sure people would prefer March over one of them as well. And then strikers, Solanke, Watkins and Isak. Now, this team, my team value is awful, and it still had 3.8 million in the bank. Obviously, if you're free hitting, you can't bench boost in the same week. So it's not going to be that useful, for someone who wants to bench boost this week and wildcard for it, or free hit, for example.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. I think they're the kind of players people are going to be looking at bringing in. I don't think there'll be many off of this list, but I could be wrong. Maybe a Bowen, for example, or Maddison, who we mentioned.
Maddison, yeah. I think I love how many penalty takers are in this team as well. Like, you got Isak, Watkins, McAllister, Fernandes, Salah, and you've got Solanke on the bench there as well. Like, I think it's lovely. I think the fact you can have Salah and Bruno is obviously nice. You don't have Kane, but he's got a single game week anyway, so you'd go, all out on the double game week players, wouldn't you? I think Maddison's a really tough one, because who would you bring Maddison in this team? Because you'd want Bruno and Salah, I think.
See,
but I think
I wouldn't. I think the time to get Maddison was like exactly what you did, and get him in for last week for the blank, because he had a good fixture then. I think I'd prefer to go for Bowen. Let's say this wasn't a free hit. Let's say it was an actual team that we were playing on going. Because West Ham have got that double coming up, I'd go for like Bowen over Maddison, even if Maddison might be better for this week.
Oh, Ben Rama. Ben Rama's on pens as well, isn't he?
Yeah, Ben Rama could be fun. That would be a real differential.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I mean, Seb, what's your thoughts on this at the moment? Is there anything that's kind of glaringly obviously missing? I think it's pretty nailed on, isn't it?
Just punched the mic there. Sorry, team. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty similar to the teams we've set up for a bench boost, give or take. So, and seeing as we work hard for it, you'd hope, and there's been no big injuries. We'll see if Rashford comes through, of course. I think you'd hope it looks decent. You mentioned Maddison. That's probably that Salah Fernandes conversation. That's probably the slot that Maddison would be taking. You wouldn't have one of them if you had Havertz rather than Watkins. You've got Isak as well here. I don't think there's anything huge. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't think there's anything huge I would change. Maybe captaincy is the most interesting discussion in this team.
Yeah, I think Tony's a tough one as well, I guess. Is that because of the booking? If he gets booked, he misses the next game, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, that's why I didn't go for him.
I don't think their fixtures aren't as good either as than other people. I think if you were like
Solanke's is lovely.
Yeah, if you were building a team just for this week, I'd wonder if you have Tony in it.
I think the slots that were tricky were the goalkeeper slots are quite tricky, but they're goalkeepers. Isak and Trent were the ones. I feel like Trent was because
you're so like, oh yeah, don't worry about goalkeepers.
Just mention the goalkeepers, but yeah.
Seb drank.
My goalkeeper got 2 points again this week, so I'm still not becoming a specialist in picking goalkeepers.
This
but
once
I'm
again
trying
is a
my best.
non-alcoholic beer, but if he mentions it enough, I might get drunk anyway.
But Isak, he was a tough pick. As in, I guess you could look at someone like Havertz instead, another penalty taker. And Trent, it was kind of like there was so much money left. I think having Trent for a double when he's got, he's going to be so lowly owned. I think I'd find that hard to resist.
If he's fit, would you get Reece James?
Maybe. Probably not. I probably wouldn't.
I would. I want that.
But he's not going to be fit.
I want that disappointment in my life. That's what I want. I want that hope and then to be struck down.
The fact he played He played 10 minutes for England, if that, and then suddenly he's out the squad. But I don't know exactly what happened.
That's just Reece James things, mate. That's what he does.
Double game week. When he's basically, if he played for England over England's inverted commas double game week, he'd have got a point.
Well, what about these Brighton boys then as well? Because, for instance, someone like me, I've only got 2 at the moment because I sold March last week. If you only had 2 Brighton players, obviously they have this double game week this week. Brentford at home, Bournemouth away, I think is pretty nice. But then the fixtures aren't that kind, but they do have all the doubles. Would you be making sure you tripled up on this Brighton team, who we saw on the last Scoutcast we did? They're ridiculously high on all the tables, all the XG, all the XA. They're ridiculously high, top 4 in all of it, I think. Would you be getting one of those in ahead of players like Bruno and Salah? Obviously, very, very different in terms of budget. You can easily get these in, but would you prioritise a Brighton midfielder, an extra Brighton midfielder, over someone like Bruno or Salah? What do you think, Seb?
Oh, me first, cool.
Sorry.
I really like the triple Brighton midfield, but maybe that's just because you don't have to choose, which obviously isn't a good reason to have a triple. It just removes that decision for you. You obviously wouldn't have Steele or Estupiñán or Dunk. We've got Steele in this team here, and you'd end up dropping one of Rashford, Salah, Fernandes. I think I'd be fine with that. It'd be one of Salah or Fernandes for me, with then potentially double Manchester United defence if you wanted to carry that forward too. Obviously, we're not talking about a free hit or something here. We're talking about, a team that you'd have to carry forward. I do quite like that. I'd want to work out benching shenanigans, because if you've got 3 Brighton midfielders, I just want to make sure that made sense in terms of, obviously you can't bench all 3 midfielders at once. So I'd want to make sure that made sense with the rotation of my team going forward. But I quite like it.
Yeah. What about you, Rich? Even if it wasn't triple Brighton, if you chose to go with, say, McAllister, who's also on pens, and Bruno is as well, is it as clear cut as just going for the premium option, or is McAllister in the debate as well for who to bring in?
I mean, looking at it and looking at most teams now, I think I'd prioritise, if we're doing transfers, not free hit, I'd prioritise, getting Bruno or Salah in ahead of a third Brighton. And it's kind of like, because I've looked at my team for the next few weeks, and I'm going to be benching Mitoma most weeks. So I feel like they're probably not the best until later in the season. Obviously, this is an incredible double now. Also, looking at structures for the end of the season as well, I'm probably thinking too far forward. And Andy Martin, who's in the chat, is going to love this. I've actually looked at, because I think we're going to want 5 midfielders and a lot of money in midfielders, I actually do think Ferguson could be an option to go for him. I know there's a lot of ex-mins risks, and he's probably not as good as the midfielders points-wise, but I think it will enable you to maybe have the premium midfielders in midfield. And it also frees up a spot for, if you want to go for like a Mahrez or a Foden, if he comes back in time as well, because I feel like there's so many midfielders we want. So I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, it's tough with Ferguson because he was benched as well, wasn't he? It was in the second game of the double game week he was benched. Obviously, he did well in the international break. He got his first goal as well, didn't he? But I almost feel like if you were going down to Ferguson, I think I prefer to go down as like Greenwood. Is it Greenwood that's now 4 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
There's a 4 mil one in there. And I think if you were determined to then have 5 midfielders and having those premiums, I think I'd go down as far as that. Because Ferguson, I'd be scared to play him most weeks with the fact that he might get benched. I don't know whether that's just me and Brighton lads be able to tell me whether he's completely nailed now moving forward. But yeah, I understand what you mean though.
It would just be to play in the doubles though. So it would be risky because it is hard just picking 2 Brighton midfielders, but then it gives you that extra spot, because I think picking a Man City midfielder is going to be really, really difficult, not just because of pet roulette, because there's not enough spots.
Yeah.
And the fact you're going to be benching, I mean, I'm going to bench Mitoma probably the next 2 game weeks after this double.
Yeah.
So it's kind of I don't want to say a dead spot, but it kind of is in a way.
So what's the goal with it though? Because like, it sounds like the reason you would do that is just to not bench Mitoma, but benching a player you own isn't a bad thing. Sure, if you get the call wrong, you end up with fewer points than you could have possibly had. But it's better than not owning them, where you just don't get the points at all.
Oh, it's not. No, it's not about not benching Mitoma. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
It's more. It's getting that extra midfield spot, so I could have a Man City player in the doubler.
Yeah,
and it's also using that Brighton spot on a striker, because I'm going to want to downgrade, like Andy said, to someone like Greenwood. But if I could go down to someone like Ferguson as my second striker, because there's not actually that many good strikers when we're getting towards the end of the season.
So would that be double Brighton mid? And
so I'd
Ferguson,
have Steele, one Brighton midfielder, and Ferguson.
I think you can carry double fine. I mean, I hear you, to be fair, but I think if it's, as Andy said, right, you're very much gambling on like, cool, I can bench Ferguson and I've got the funds and I've got the spot. That's all great. Obviously, you've lost a forward spot if that's valuable to you. We've talked about Watkins, Isak, Havertz, and all that. Haaland, Kane, Solanke, but then in those doubles, when you're like, okay, Ferguson's time to shine, it's a long way off. I do think he's probably better for that team than Welbeck, but I do think they're going to share minutes. Say Ferguson, what did he get? Like 1, 2 points, something, or 3 points in this last double? And then your McAllisters, your Marches, your Matomas are getting, 10, 12, 15 more points than that. They're captain options. You're never going to captain Ferguson, although you wouldn't anyway because you'd own one of the other midfielders. That's fine. Yeah. I think you could very easily come out of that. And it would be unfortunate, but you could come out of that 20 points down in one of those doubles, and that'd be pretty painful.
I've probably gone on too big of a tangent there. I mean, I guess the point I was trying to say is I wouldn't desperately bring in a second Brighton midfielder this week, but maybe ignore the Ferguson thing.
Question.
That's thinking very far ahead.
Question.
Yeah,
I think it's valid. We can't, mate. It's live. Maybe that was the joke. Now I look stupid. So a question for you, right? You can choose one of Salah, Fernandes, or McAllister for just this week. Which one would you get?
Is it
Everything
Fernandes
else.
or
This is kind of
McAllister?
my question, because I
Salah,
think the
Fernandes, McAllister.
fixtures for Brighton are way better than United and Liverpool.
I have an answer I'm very, very strong on.
I would. I'm not going to say McAllister, but I would bring in a Brighton midfielder, and that was kind of my point at the beginning, because I'm looking at it and thinking, so basically, I'm going to do Odegaard to somebody. Who's that somebody going to be? And it's probably going to be March McAllister over Bruno and Salah.
If it's your captain option, I guess it's different.
Yeah,
as in McAllister.
If like,
yeah.
If we're talking a lot of focus on just this week, not going forward, but I think McAllister, if you're confident he doesn't play at DM, or at least not for too long, I think McAllister is the best Brighton midfield option. Although they're all close, we've spoken about that loads. Whatever, flip a coin. But between Salah, Fernandes, and McAllister, I mean, the fixtures very heavily favour McAllister. Definitely over Liverpool, and then Fernandes and McAllister, they both have Brentford at home, so it's Bournemouth away versus Newcastle away. I know which one of those I prefer. They both have penalties, and then I guess, like, kind of in some sort of sweet irony, they both have the question over if they play DM. So I think between Fernandes and McAllister is miles ahead. So then it's just McAllister or Salah, and we're talking about edging Fernandes over Salah. So I think I
love we're talking about all these premium assets that we want for a double game week, but we're worried they might play DM.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem right, does it?
There's a meme about that, isn't there? So
must be.
Yeah, I think there is. Probably not safe for work though. Yeah, and it's I think it's close. The biggest thing is though, and we've touched on this already, we're not just looking at one game week. We're looking at the fact that moving forward, Brighton do have those double game weeks, but they don't have great fixtures between this double game week and the next one. And then you're looking at Bruno, who's got plenty of double game weeks and does have nice double game weeks moving forward as well. But I think it's close, and it's closer than people thought it was going to be as well. Moving on to bench boost in 34, which I think was really, really good that we put this on here. So well done, team, because bench boost 34 is the other option in terms of when you bench boost. So a lot of people are bench boosting now in 29, but there's still a lot of people out there that are looking at it. They might already have Haaland, and they might, as in like still have Haaland and be thinking, oh, what do I do? Rashford isn't 100% going to play in this one as well. And there's going to be a lot of people thinking, right, do I bench boost in this week, or do I bench boost in game week 34? Now, Seb, you put together for us a bench boost 34 team and what it could potentially look like if you were to get there. Now, this isn't a free hit. This is a bench boost. So you'd have to build towards this, obviously, in 34, or you would use your wildcard in 33, and obviously you'd have this kind of exact team. But how is it comparing, and which one do you think you prefer?
Yeah, so there's two slides here. We'll go through this one first and then another. I guess this is kind of your using Rich's team a minute ago as inspiration for what could you give or take, put an ideal bench boost together here, which doesn't necessarily look ahead to the future too much or into the past to what you could build. So I'll run through it real quick. Edison in goal. You've got Trent and Robbo, Liverpool double at the back with Shaw and Estupinan. Salah vice captain. Rashford, Fernandes, Matoma, McAllister. So triple Brighton, both midfielders there. No March, although flip a coin. And then Haaland captain up front with a bench, which is boosted, of course, of Fabianski or Areola, depending on what we know about West Ham. Stones, Danny Ings, and Mitrovic. Now those last two striker spots are a bit, but it's going for the doubles in Ings and Mitrovic there. You'd probably be looking to transfer them out very quickly, which I think moves me on to more realistically. Now, of course, I don't have the wild card. I've used that. I'm not wildcarding 33, so very easy for me to look at this for 10 minutes and be like, oh, this is what I do without any pressure of actually having to do it. So there probably are some tweaks to be made. But if you are bench boosting in 34, you are probably wildcarding in 33. The big advantage you have there, I don't actually think is the bench boost in 34. Sure, you get some more points off your bench, but the team is the team me, you, and Rich can get to, probably with transfers, maybe a couple of hits, but then people wildcarding in 33 probably took hits earlier to do what we did when we wildcarded. So that's much of a muchness. I think the real advantage is being able to build for the doubles in 36 and 37 as well. So this team, if you did bench boost this team, you see it has a couple of singlers on the bench, and Mitrovic again is not ideal, but it's about building for the period. So you would have Edison in goal again, Trent, Robert at the back, Shaw, Stupinan, I think that's basically the same. Salah vice-captain, Rashford, Grealish in there now, Matoma, McAllister, Haaland captain. You have a bench of De Gea, so no whoever it was, Fabianski or Areola. You have Trippier, Isak and Mitrovic. So Danny Ings before was just there, for the double, you'd probably move him on. This team here, the idea is you would then have, because you wouldn't need a transfer from 33 to 34, so you're rolling one then, and then you'd have 3 free transfers, I think, between this and 37. Obviously, you'd want to aim for 36 too. So with this team, you could get very close to the team we just showed for like a great bench boost for 34, probably close to what the rest of us would get. But then you are doing, let's say, Mitrovic to Havertz, Trent to Chilwell and Robertson to James. Of course, you've got an extra transfer to see if that works at the time and you can change what happens. But that would also get you very close to maxing out on 36 and 37 doublers, obviously with plenty of benching headaches in there too. And I think that's how you maximise this period. It's not just about wildcarding to bench boost in 34. It's about wildcarding to then have the team that gets the most out of 36 and 37. And I guess, for Rich as well, we've got that triple Liverpool in here for the end of their season as well, which is something maybe not everyone else would achieve. So I quite like this. I think this is why weeks and weeks ago, we were all actually talking about wildcard 33, bench boost 34 until the FA Cup happened. Now, the reason we changed our minds and wildcarded earlier and bench boosted this week, potentially, is because of those Brighton fixtures and whatnot. And we've seen how Brighton have appeared heavily. Me, at least, I had none of them. I had some injuries in my team. So it made sense for me. I think it made sense for the other people here who did that as well. Because as well, we can get a team close to this. So I wouldn't be worried if you can't achieve this with a wildcard. But it does show why it was a powerful option in the first place. And how, if you're still holding on to it, I think you can probably apply it going forward. Although, just to reiterate before I shut up, I spent a few minutes on this, of course. I don't have the emotional investment in this, so please don't copy this. Please do go, double check this works for your team and your strategy.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking while Seb was speaking, I was thinking, why didn't we wait for wildcard 33? Because it does look a lot better than I think I thought it would at the time, as in at the time by a couple of weeks ago. So I think, people who've got their wildcard left, this could be very, very powerful. But then also looking at it, it is kind of, it is the players we've been talking about, isn't it? The players that we're going to look to be bringing in, like Salah, for example. Interesting that Bruno's not there. So it kind of backs up that while we might be looking at Bruno now, that's going to change very quickly.
He's in this team.
He's not in this one. This is the 33, not the bench boost 34. So Grealish is in.
Sorry.
Grealish is in. You've got Shaw and De Gea instead of you had Fabianski in the other one. That comes back to that Gabriel thing, which we can cover in a minute. But just to reiterate as well on Rich was saying, I completely agree in isolation, this looks great. But maybe I'm just trying to protect our guard 26 a bit. But it's not just about what looked great this week, because we can get close to this as well with our free transfers. People who were doing this probably didn't have your triple Brighton, triple Brentford probably wasn't that great, but they didn't have the team we had back then. And what did you score, Rich? Like 120 something? Like some people were getting 60s and 130.
Yeah. I wouldn't change it. My rank would have a extra zero at the end.
You might have somewhere between 30 and 50 points on someone who's doing this. So they need to gain that on you in this week, which is entirely possible. But I don't think just because it looks good in isolation doesn't mean we know it was the best route yet. I don't think. Says a very defensive wildcard 26er.
But I'd still be very jealous if someone's sitting around, 100k mark and they've got their wildcard in the pocket. They could shoot up, in a week or two.
Absolutely, but you've already done that, right? They could get to 50k, which is exactly where you are, right? They do have a gain to come. They should gain on us, but we've already had the gain, or are about to have it in 29.
I do also think that wildcard in 33, I know you've just mentioned about your free transfers and that you could use after it to move a few players around. Everything we've looked at the moment is using those kind of middle price strikers on your bench in game week 34, because you're going to be bench boosting 34. It sounds so easy to be able to move those funds back into your team again, but it's really not going to be. Things will happen, things will change, and all of a sudden you've got those players on your bench that are just costing that little bit too much money. I suppose unless you start benching, those Brighton players, I suppose that are a little bit cheaper, isn't it? And then you start maybe using players like Isak. But it just feels to me like you've got, what would you have then? 3 weeks to change
goalies
and
as
try
well,
and
isn't
move
it?
those funds around. Yeah,
Edison and De Gea is a lot of money, but it makes perfect sense as well. I love that we're talking about Edison. Yeah. Edison again.
Hey, drink.
Oh, that made a nasty sound. Sorry if you heard that. So yeah, the Gabriel thing as well. Just I'll probably fumble this. So again, please check my working. But when I was putting this together, the interesting thing was obviously I've got triple City, triple United, triple Brighton, triple Liverpool, double Newcastle. You could end up with triple Newcastle. People who wildcarded earlier may well do. And then I'd be wanting to do, for example, Trent and Robbo to Chilwell and James, Mitrovic to, I guess, Havertz. You could do there, so triple Chelsea. So the interesting thing was balancing triple, like what was that, triple triples or quad triples, but also making it work for the squad. So if you held Gabriel into this period, obviously you can't access one of the 5 defenders listed here, which is Trippier, Estupiñán, Shaw, Robertson, Trent, which means you then need to be looking at, say, for example, for Brighton, you need triple Brighton midfield or a steal, which I think we're less sure of going forward. It also means you're then maybe looking at Fernandes in the midfield, which I think when I tried it on the Bench Boost 34 was about 2 million more than this team. So while in isolation, holding someone like Gabriel is fine, I think it really messes with the structure you'd be looking at here. And so you need access to, for example, your Trent, your Robbo, your Shaw, and De Gea was quite an interesting one for the United triple to make this team work.
Interesting. I mean, if I keep doing this, and I probably shouldn't be, but if we're just looking at it in isolation, this team for Bench Boost 34 and Bench Boost 29 that we've just put up there, that's our ideal Bench Boost 29. Rich, if you had to say, this is the one I'd rather have, this is the one I would rather bench boost, which one would it be?
I think that the 34 bench boost looks better. However, if I'd built for a bench boost in 29, just use it. A bit like I said, when in 27, I think just get it done, because it's really hard to actually, when you get to this time, I mean, Mitrovic could be suspended, for example. Isak could be injured, but Foden might be back and Grealish gets benched. So much stuff can change. So, yeah, I think it will be better in 34, but I think it's always going to look better a few weeks out. And I would imagine most people, if they're bench boosting 29, have already set their mind on doing it.
Seb, what do you think?
I think the one thing I wouldn't do is bench boost in 34 without a wildcard in 33. Rich has covered a few things there, right? You might be holding, I don't think you'd hold Mitrovic, but you might be holding players who are no longer a good pick for 34 for quite a while. And I think that only really works with the wildcard in 33, because assuming you also have used that wildcard, you've presumably set up for 29. So not only would you be hoping for quite a long time that 34 still works for your team, but you'd be passing up an opportunity that does work for your team. You probably know that.
Yeah. And I think Rich kind of hit the nail on the head earlier as well, in terms of there is stock to be taken in just get it done. Like just get the bench boost done. If you're really trying to work out between the two and you're not sure which way to go, knowing that the bench boost is done and you don't have to think about your bench as much anymore is genuinely quite nice. Like it is nice moving forward, especially with that amount of time left as well. Right. Should we move on to our teams then? So moving on to my bus team. At the moment, I haven't activated the bench boost, although it will happen, and I haven't done any moves. I've got one free transfer and I've got about 5 million in the bank, I think it is, because I did Haaland to Watkins. I've got Kepa in goal, he's got the double. I've got Henry, Trippier, Botman and Estupiñán that have the double as well. I've got Maddison, Rashford and Matoma with the double, Kane, who doesn't, and Watkins and Tony with the double. Then on the bench, I've got Raya with the double and Odegaard, Saka and Zinchenko, all with Leeds at home. Now, I was looking at this the other day. I could bench boost this, not do any transfers. I'd actually be quite happy, if I'm perfectly honest. All those Arsenal boys on the bench, Leeds at home, absolutely fine. I wouldn't play them above anybody that's playing in the team there, maybe over Henry or something like that, I guess. But I think what I would get out of that bench would actually be quite nice and roll a transfer. I'm not going to do that, obviously, because I want to get rid of some of my Arsenal players. So at the moment, it is most likely that I'm going to be doing Zinchenko to Shaw, because I want Shaw moving forward. Even though I don't see a lot of clean sheets for United moving forward, I think they're going to get enough, and he's got the upside of his attacking potential as well, and he's on some set pieces, so that's lovely too. I'm finding it very, very hard to get Bruno back in with the getting Bruno with the idea that I have to keep that money to get Haaland back in 30 if he's back. And I'm unsure as to whether to go Bruno, because everything in my head is saying that he's not going to do what I want him to do, but he's just got so many fixtures and it's going to happen at some point. So I'm kind of reluctant to get him in because basically I think I have to get rid of Kane if I do. Even losing Saka over Odegaard, I still can't get to Bruno and get Haaland the next week.
Is it just Maddison that it's causing? Because I guess the difference is I have, like, say, McAllister. He's 5 something. Is Maddison 8 or like 8 something? Is that what's like causing you the problems? Not being able to get Fernandes and like get Haaland.
So Madison's 8.2. So it could be that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you should swap those, but yeah, that's an interesting one.
No, I know, and I wanted Maddison. That's what, I got him last week early as well. But I think because I would have March in there instead, I think my idea was always to get Maddison over Bruno anyway. So I think in my head when I was planning it all, when I was thinking about budgets, I was just thinking I'd get Maddison over Bruno. But now I don't think I was thinking far enough ahead in terms of the fact that after this Leicester, obviously it's done, and then I could have got Bruno in terms of how many fixtures he's got moving up. But I also just wasn't that keen on Bruno as an asset. So it's it's a tough one. I think it's going to be Odegaard out to March and McAllister, and I might just forego Bruno.
There's definitely a world where Maddison outscores Fernandes this week. Like, I think that's not even that unlikely.
Yeah. I think this week it's fine. I think moving forward it's going to be tougher. It's whether thing is, I like Henry because I can just bench him moving forward. Like, I'm quite happy having that as an option, if I'm honest. But I really do want to have that third United option because they've got so many fixtures moving forward. And even if it's like 2 or 3 extra double game weeks, that's 2 or 3 extra fixtures people are having over me if they have that third United asset. And yeah, I'll see what happens. And also, if I do go Bruno, I just feel like I do need a bit more money in that midfield. But yeah, I feel like it's fine this week. And I feel like even if I don't get Bruno this week, I'll be absolutely fine. I think I'm leaning towards captaining Matoma as well over Rashford. Or McAllister when it gets to it. I just think the fixtures are better, if I'm perfectly honest. But yeah, eventually then my bench will be Kane, Saka, and Henry, probably, I think it is. So
I was going to say...
That seems fine.
And it's kind of irrelevant, but you're not going to... If you weren't bench boosting, you'd play Saka ahead of Kane and you'll play Saka ahead of Rico Henry.
Ahead of Henry, yeah.
Yeah. So just so you get the right bench boost score, so we compare accurately,
Terrible. It's all he cares about now. So I think the team's fine, to be perfectly honest. I don't think there's anything much more I have to decide. It's just whether I do something like Kane down and then get someone like Bruno. But yeah, we'll see.
It looks good. It looks a good team. Yeah,
it's okay, isn't it? It's nothing. It's fine, and I think it'd be fine for a bench boost as well. I'm happy with the bench boost.
Funny thing is, if Raya hauls, it's probably going to have a detriment to your first team. Although actually, without Bruno, maybe not. Actually, maybe not.
Yeah, true. I don't expect a lot from Raya, if I'm honest. If I get 4 points, I'd be quite happy from him. And I'm not expecting a lot. Brighton away and Man United away, two of the hardest fixtures you could have at the moment. But yeah, we'll see. Like I said, I could easily roll this and bench boost still. But sorry, with Henry on the bench. Sorry, yes, Henry on the bench over Saka.
Yes, please, mate.
Yeah. Rich, let's move on to your team. Lovely bench boost here. Kane on the bench, lovely.
Yeah, we don't have to spend too much time on mine this week. Yeah, I'm going to be. So what am I going to be doing? So I've got Steele in goal, Gabriel, Botman, Trippier. Ward-Prowse is going to become Bruno or Salah. McAllister, captain at the moment. Matoma, I'm going to start Saka. Rashford, Tony and Watkins. And yeah, so then my bench would be Raya, Kane, Pinnock and Zinchenko. So like I said, I'm definitely doing Ward-Prowse to Bruno or possibly Salah, but probably Bruno. And then the other move I'm considering is Zinchenko to Shaw for a hit. The reason I'd have to do a hit is because obviously I had to move Sanchez to Steele the other week, so I've only got one transfer. That's one I'm weighing up because I don't think Shaw in for hit is any better than just starting Gabriel this week, as in once I've taken into account the hit. Yeah. But then when I start looking at game week 30 and 31, I think having Shaw will be quite beneficial instead of playing one of the Arsenal defenders.
Yeah.
So I probably will do the hit. I mean, captaincy could be, honestly, there's about 5 players I've considered. Like genuinely.
Kane on your bench as well.
Yeah, basically it's between Kane, Saka and Tony. to bench one, basically.
Oh, you just see it, can't you, Tony, getting that booking in the first game?
I was just thinking, worst case with Kane, absolute worst case, he gets like 13 points.
That's not worst case.
That's worst case.
I was thinking you were going to say 17 for a hat trick.
All right, 70. Yeah, that would be quite bad.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of points,
13 I could handle.
Yeah.
There's no chance I'm getting a green arrow this week. I think the bench boost looks strong.
So, but like the way to look at that though, right, is you went from 150? Was it? And then to 50k? Was something like that?
As in, what, over the last week?
Last week, like with your
last
bench,
week, yeah, I was about
whatever it was.
110k or 120k or something.
So like if you drop, I mean, I don't think this is a guaranteed red hour by any means, but like if you did drop to like 70, 75, 80k, whatever it is, well then over this period you've gone from 110 to 80. That's good moves. Just because you did it in one big chunk and then came backwards, that's fine. That's what happens when we all play our chips in different orders, right? You can't maintain a lead that someone else has the advantage still to play.
No, of course. What's funny is I'm really looking forward to this game week, and I don't know why. I think I've kind of missed the game. But
I think you get a green here easy, man.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't. I think there's going to be so many good bench boosts around. I think there's going to be a lot of bench boosts, and there's a lot of good bench boosts.
Yeah, but 50,000 of them?
Potentially.
Okay.
I don't know how many people are copying people like Andy Let's Talk FPL anymore, but they'll be hovering around there, won't they?
We'll see how you get on. I think this is a good team, personally. And what was the move?
The thing is,
it's a Bruno
good team, but then you've both got 4 extra players.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
There's no differentials. Unless I kept Ward-Prowse.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. Well, let's make you feel better then. Let's look at Seb's bench boost. Talk us through yours, Seb.
Sure. It's pretty standard, isn't it? I have lined my team up correctly. I've got Kane on the bench. I've got Saka playing, my friend. I've got Henry on the bench. I've got some transfers to make, of course. I have. What was that? What did you say there, Andy? What was that?
It's Rich going on about the bench boost wankery, isn't it? You've got to set your bench up properly.
I'm on Rich's side here, mate. It's all the integrity of the comparison. Yeah, can't be.
It's your team score.
So I've got Steele starting, I guess, ahead of Kepa. If we're going to follow that through, I don't know if I thought about that. Steele starting, Trippier, Botman, Gabriel, Chilwell, Mitoma, McAllister, vice-captain, Rashford, captain currently, but there's every chance that swaps. They're the only two I'm considering, I think. Saka makes up the midfield, then Watkins and Tony. We have the bench boost pressed, which is Kepa, Kane, Odegaard and Henry. I have 1 free transfer. Would have been 2 if the whole Steele thing hadn't happened, but he earned some points, so that's fine. I went early on Chilwell, so I would have very, very likely done it was Ben Mee to Chilwell. I would have very likely done Ben Mee to Chilwell or James this week. So while that's fine, I guess, I am still down on points than that. It was the wrong move to do Chilwell early. I've lost at least 1 point, maybe a few more. But I have 1 transfer, and I think I will at least use 2 of them. I want Reece James to be fit. I very badly want to do Henry to James. It may not be sensible, but I want it. So there. And then the other one would be Gabriel to Shaw, and then we're looking at maybe Odegaard to Fernandes. So that'd be -8 overall. I think that looks nice for a bench boost. It would only be Kane and Saka singling, who would probably then both be on the bench if I were to line it up properly. I think that makes a nice little team, although at an expensive cost of -8. So we'll see about that.
Yeah, nice. And then
I like how
Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, I like how annoyed Seb is about this 1 point that you lost when it was you that convinced me to do all these transfers during the World Cup, because it's effectively like losing 1 point over my rivals.
I think, I guess it was so long ago, man. Now I don't know, but it's an interesting one because I definitely went early on Chilwell. It wasn't like a do I bring Chilwell in or not. It was do I go early. So I spent 4 points to get him a week early. And he scored 1 point less than the player I sold. So absolute worst case, or best case, I'm down 1 point. But currently I'm down 5 points. So I need Chilwell to do something. I could have held Ben Mee this week as well. I was going to make that move anyway, but that still might not have come off. So I'm down 5 points currently, which is a little bit. So the decision is whether I went early or not. And I think it was the wrong choice to go early. Well, it was the wrong... if we want to phrase this correctly, it was the wrong outcome. I would make that decision again. And I think watching the match, James got an assist, but Chilwell and James both looked terrifyingly good. I think I texted one of you two during it saying, because I'm all week I was like, I want Chilwell, I want James, I want Havertz, I want that triple up. I think during that match, all three of them looked terrifying. Like Reece James was stood on the penalty spot half the time.
Yeah. No, I got the move. And actually, I was watching that first half and just thinking, there's no way Everton are going to score. And then they somehow got two, didn't they? Yeah.
Chilwell went from 8 points to 1 very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And what about the community team? Whereabouts are the community team in compared to us now, by the way?
The community... You know the answer to that.
What?
So the community team are currently 61.6k, mate. So you're
your note's
74K.
wrong there.
So sorry?
There's a note saying only Seb's below them.
Yeah, I wish that was on purpose.
It's above Andy.
I wish I'd set Andy a trap there, but no, I got Andy's wrong when I was writing this. I thought I read it wrong. But yeah, so you played yourself there, Andy. Sorry. So Andy's 74. I'm 85. Rich is 50, which means Rich is ahead of the community team. They are 61.6k, 85th in the Scoutcast League, which obviously is better than the same people they are better on overall. I think Joe, by the way, is he like 20 or 30k? Maybe a bit better. So Joe's beating the community team. I think he can be confident that he'll remain ahead of it, which is not a good season for Joe after a couple of poorer ones. It's really, really nice. He's been doing great. But the community team possibly isn't as good a shape as us. So if myself and Andy were going to overtake it, I think it might be the next couple of weeks. They scored, I haven't even written that down. It was in the 40s, 48, I think. We've got Kepa, Zinchenko, Trippier, Shah, Henry, Saka, vice-captain. That was the big difference this week. That's why we caught on it. Odegaard and Matoma, who blanked, so didn't even put out 11. Kane, captain. It's a fine call, right? An outcome thing. Watkins, which was the move, we did Haaland to Watkins, and we rolled the other transfer, so we do have 2 going into this week. And Tony makes up the team, and then a bench of Aurea, who didn't blank, and then Marshall, Stupinan, and Rashford, who all do blank. 2 free transfers this week. Couple of mil in the bank, if I remember correctly. I would imagine we are going to be trying to find some doublers for our team, maybe losing Rico Henry, but we'll put some votes up at the end of the week for that.
Lovely. So make sure you vote as well, because that community team. So you've got all 3 of us and the community team all in the top 100k. I think that's quite a success because the season finishes now, so we're not going to carry on after this. Right now, let's try and get some questions from the community as well. So we're obviously a little bit over from what we normally are, but that's because we started about 15 minutes later. Apologies, that's my fault. But chuck in some questions now, and we'll answer as many as possible as quickly as possible. I'm not sure how many are in the chat, actually. How many people are joining us tonight for those people that are on there? Here we see.
Last time I had it up, it was 600 or so, but I don't want to press buttons because I'm scared we'll end.
Lovely. No, that's fine. So thank you very much. Make sure you do like the stream as well, because it does help us get to as many people as possible that need help. Zubin says, do I sell Odegaard and Saka for Bruno and McAllister? It gives me triple Brighton and maybe a differential. Or do I keep Saka? So do I sell Odegaard and Saka for Bruno and McAllister? Seb?
You're going to have to repeat that. Sorry, I was putting it to a screen that actually had our faces on because I didn't put the camera on.
That's all right. Does he sell Odegaard and Saka for Bruno and McAllister?
Both of them. If for free, yeah, I guess. If for a hit, you probably just do one of those.
Yeah. Rich?
I'm guessing you have to do both to do it, because I mean, I would quite like doing like Odegaard to McAllister, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose I would do it reluctantly.
Yeah. Footballman 10 says, thoughts on West Ham assets, particularly Bowen, Rich?
I think there's better midfielders. I think we talked about Bowen and Benrahma briefly, didn't we? I think they're good options, especially because they have got another double coming up. Yeah. I just think you'll be, even waiting for that next West Ham double, you'll be tempted by other midfielders. So I probably wouldn't.
Yeah. Seb?
Yeah, I'm with Rich. I think I had Danny Ings in one of the teams who I think Benrahma may be on penalties ahead of him. So
yeah,
Benrahma maybe for those pens, but they're decent. You just have some better options, don't you?
Yeah. FPL Gatey says, is Darwin worth a punt this week? Seb?
He's always worth a punt, but no, probably not based on other options, but yes.
Yeah. Rich?
I think he's injured. As in...
Oh, there we go.
He was definitely flagged. Hasn't been training, but I think maybe look up to that. If he's injured, I wouldn't go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot take there. Don't get injured players. It's not our first season in FPL team.
Gorav says, "Do I do Brennan to Kane for a hit, Rich?"
Brennan to Kane. It's in Brennan Johnson.
Yeah, I don't think.
No, I wouldn't.
Brennan's got a double as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, I don't get that.
Yeah.
Is it the other way
Unless
around?
he means the other way round.
Yeah. Is it the other way
No,
around?
surely not.
I mean, the other way round would make more sense because you'll be freeing up funds for the future.
Oh, I don't know. So that's a no then.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah. Seb?
Yeah, Warriors said.
Joe Portland, bench boosting this week. Assuming it's paid for, is it worth a second -4 to do Ward to Everson? Seb?
What does paid for mean?
I was going to ask the same.
I'm assuming, I don't know.
Like a voucher. You've got a voucher.
Yeah.
Does that mean because I guess
would
Everson
you
is
take a
starting
hit
over?
to do Ward to Everson?
Sorry, this is not.
Or
quick,
another
is it?
keeper?
It depends on, I guess, because if you're bench boosting, you want doubles. Yes, because you're holding them going forward. If it's a long term thing, yes. Although,
Get
do
two
we know
extra fixtures
Ward
as
and
well.
Everson is a long term thing? That sounds very much
think-
like Sanchez and Steele, but without the upside.
He's definitely come out and said he's wanting Everson for the next couple of weeks to give him a chance.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
I'm assuming they don't have the funds and already have triple Brighton already. Because otherwise, I'd
so
look
cheap.
at Steele.
Everson's like 3.8, isn't he?
Yeah, I think I would do it. It like Seb said, it's a bit like the Steele situation. You know he's going to play at least the first game. If you want to get the bench boost done, just do it and then, I guess, worry about that spot later.
Yeah. Hugo, Chilwell or Shaw to bring in this week, Seb?
Chilwell.
Rich?
Sure. Definitely sure.
Definitely Chilwell.
FPL Ron Manager, evening Paul, says, who do you think is the most important premium to get in for Game Week 29, regardless of whether you are using your bench boost or not? Rich?
Most important premium? Salah.
Oh,
Well, Bruno's not a premium, so
Oh,
it has to be Salah.
You've got to get Salah now, Rich. You've got to get him. Seb?
Alexis McAllister.
I think you were going to say Sanchez then. Alexis Sanchez. God, I miss him. Oh, Gorav says, yeah, it was the other way around. It was Kane to Brennan. Yeah.
Okay,
Brilliant.
that makes more sense.
So, would you do that?
I haven't checked the injury news. If Johnson's fit, because he played unexpectedly, didn't he, before the break? But yeah, if they're fit, yeah, I probably would consider it. I'd prefer Solanke.
Yeah, I'd prefer Solanke. Presuming this is kind of like a funds thing as well, I'd go Solanke.
Yeah.
Rahul says, Rich is 50k. My God. I know, it's a quick rise. And Keen Eastwood says, which Leicester keeper defender would you pick, Seb?
Sorry, the keeper defender threw me for a second. Which I mean keeper, I guess, because I can't really think of a defender that's a good option. Castagna, maybe. So you, for money, you use 3.8, 3.9 now. Go Everson and cross your fingers.
Yeah, Rich.
Yeah, I mean it would be Everson, but I know their fixtures are good, but I wouldn't really fancy that.
Yeah,
I think players like Shaw you can bring in or De Gea, and they've got a bit more long-term use. Obviously, they're a lot more expensive.
I mean, if you're needing goalkeepers and defenders, we've looked at a bunch of them tonight that aren't Leicester, both in the near term and the long term. And same with goalkeepers. Like really, you're choosing a Steele. Obviously, there's the question over his place, of course, but a Kepa, a De Gea, a Pope for the longer term, an Edison maybe if you're free hitting at the right time. I think Leicester are quite a way down the list unless it's a really tight funds thing.
Yeah. Lovely stuff. Right. Thank you so much for everybody in the chat. Last time we checked, we had over 600 people in there. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. And thank you as well if you're listening on the pod or you're listening after it was live. As always, you've been joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode. And Rich, I hope you've enjoyed your evening.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's nice to be back, isn't it?
It is. No, it actually is. It actually is. It feels like it's been a while.
Yeah. And Seb, I hope you enjoyed yourself. And thank you for directing and doing all the bits behind the scenes because my tech stuff is not good.
Yeah, I nearly didn't not make any mistakes, but I also did. It's been a pleasure. It's always lovely to talk to you too about FPL, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been nice. Thank you.
Cool. Right, well, hopefully, obviously, we have the rest of the week. Make sure you tune into any other Scout streams that are on, and we wish you luck for the game week coming up. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.